Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. We have a really fun episode ahead today. I'm really excited about this one. I was able to make a little bit of a graphic, and we're going to go over that. It was a little draft thing, but first, Zach, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing great. Just got back from another little mini vacay. I am sunburnt as heck, and excited to be back with you, Joey, to talk about some Broncos stuff.
Yes, sir. As am I. As am I. My weekend was good too. I had a good, very solid weekend of some fun excursions. Got to relax on the Sunday. That's the best. It was not as rainy as the other times. It was pretty good. I thought this weekend was solid. How was your vacation, Zach?
It was nice. It was nice. Got in the water some. It was cold, but had a wetsuit, so it was nice, refreshing. Ready to get back to work though, and start covering some Colorado Buffaloes.
Well, Zach, I'm jealous. I'm a big seafood guy, and you were messaging me, telling me how much seafood you were eating and everything like that. So that makes me very jealous. But let's get into the show here. Let's get into the show. First, we're going to start this episode off with some news. And I think the biggest of news that came out, and you know what? I saw a lot of comments about it, Zach, and it was that Rod Smith should be in the Hall of Fame. Rod Smith himself came out and said, yeah, you know what? I do think I should be in the Hall of Fame. I just don't think that they will put me in there. And Mike Shanahan laid out the reasons as to why he thinks that he should be in the Hall of Fame as well. Zach, do you think Rod Smith should or should not be in the Hall of Fame?
I think he should be. I anticipated saying no to that question. But looking at it, he should be. He's better than quite a few Hall of Fame guys. Pro Football Reference has a great Hall of Fame tracker that tallies up your career accolades and stats and kind of like a war thing, wins above replacement thing to figure out like, are you deserving of being a Hall of Famer? He's ahead of guys like Lynn Swann, Harold Carmichael, John Stallworth. Swann and Stallworth, by the way, are getting a nice boost because of the 4 Super Bowl rings. And then Bobby Mitchell, Bob Hayes, and Tommy McDonald, 3 other Hall of Famers. So he would be a lower end one, but there's totally an argument for him to be made there. He's right next to guys like Fred Biletnikoff, who are in on Pro Football Reference's Hall of Fame monitor. A little behind the Hines Wards and Anquan Boldens and CU alum Cliff Branches of the world. Little further up is like Calvin Johnson and whatnot. So I think he's a lower end one, but he is deserving. The average Hall of Fame wide receiver has 2 first-team All-Pros and 6 Pro Bowl appearances, though. Rod Smith is at 0 first-team All-Pros and 3 Pro Bowl appearances. But from a statistical standpoint, he's right on pace in terms of yardage, average yardage you would see from a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Reception should be at 748. Smith is 100 above that at 849. He's got 68 touchdowns, though. Average is 90. But I think you also have to factor in the argument of this is the best undrafted wide receiver of all time, and the novelty of that, I think, maybe gives him a leg up. Though the path ahead for him is rough. You've got guys like Larry Fitzgerald, Reggie Wayne, Julio Jones, Torrey Holt, Steve Smith, Andre Johnson, Anquan Bolden, who are all coming up ahead of him, and none of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. All very deserving, yeah.
Weren't they already on the ballot as well? That's kind of my thing here. There's 2 different parts to this question, right? He should definitely be in the Hall of Fame, but he's not because of his skill set, but because of how the NFL punishes wide receivers getting in the NFL Hall of Fame. That's the main issue. If we're really having a discussion here, it's not just at Rod Smith. It's the wide receiver position as a whole. The fact that a T.O., a Terrell Owens had to wait 2 years to get in when I think that he's a top 5 wide receiver of all time. I don't even think it's a question. Torrey Holt's still not in. You said it. Steve Smith is coming up on his second year. He's still not in. There's plenty of guys that had to wait. Andre Reed is a guy that had to wait a while, and he's definitely should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, that's kind of the concern there, Zach, for me, where it's like, should he be in the Hall of Fame? Yes. But when I look at how they're treating the wide receiver position as a whole, they need to fix that. It's not just a Rod Smith issue, it's a wide receiver issue. What do you make of that?
I fully agree. Need more wide receivers in the Hall of Fame. You figure it's, them and corner and like safety are the only positions where you're having that many out on the field at a time. It's like defensive linemen, if you wanted to lump them all together, or linebackers. I guess in the old days, there'd be like 3 linebackers out at a time and whatnot. And you look at the Hall of Fame, there's a lot of those positions represented. I do feel wide receivers a little underrepresented. And I think it's tough, though. You still want to keep it exclusive, but I agree with you. I think he is more than deserving from a talent perspective, but it's kind of a product of his position that he's not already in there.
So here's some things I'm going to ask you real quick. I'm going to go through some of these guys at wide receiver that still aren't in, and you tell me if you think Rod Smith should be in ahead of them. Just a little game. I looked up online like 5 guys that wide receivers that aren't in the Hall of Fame yet. Torrey Holt or Rod Smith?
I think it's close, but you got to go probably with Torrey Holt. The stats lean heavily in Torrey Holt's favor.
Okay, what do you make of Andre Johnson?
And accolades. Andre Johnson, yeah, absolutely. That's a guy from my childhood. He has 2 first-team All-Pros to Rod Smith's 0, 7 Pro Bowls to Smith's 3, and again, the statistical advantage.
Yes, he's 11th all time in receiving yards. But this is the point I'm kind of making, as it's a wide receiver issue, right? Reggie Wayne, still not in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah. Man, 6 first-team All-Pros.
Yes, Steve Smith, like we said, it's just hard, man.
2 first-team All-Pros.
Super, super difficult for these wide receivers to get in there. So yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think he's right. He said, "No, I won't probably get in, but I should be," and that I totally think he hit it, the nail on the head. I don't think he'll get in. Should he? Yes. I don't think he will, unless the NFL figures out a way to get more wide receivers in fast, because it's just going to keep piling up, right? More and more wide receivers are going to retire that absolutely need a spot in, and it's just going to be hard for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say the argument for him, though, is Isaac Bruce. You look at Isaac Bruce's resume, 0 first-team All-Pros, just like Rod Smith, 4 Pro Bowls to Rod Smith's 3. And then the stats do favor Isaac Bruce. He's got 4,000 more receiving yards, 23 more touchdowns. So there's a good gap there in the stats, but Isaac Bruce is already in the Hall of Fame. From an accolade standpoint, the 2 are pretty close. So there's a chance for Rod Smith. I think it's a long one, though.
You think there's a chance? Okay. Well, hey, thank you
for
giving me a little hope there. I'll take it because I think he should too. But I think let's move on to the next one here. And Melvin Gordon, he thinks that Russell Wilson, Zach, can become a MVP caliber quarterback again, or that's at what he told Jim Rome, at least. Do you think, and I'm asking you, and I don't know why, Zach, but do you think that Russell Wilson can be an MVP caliber quarterback?
Yes. I'm going to surprise you. Now, do I think it's likely? No, not all that close. And I agree, Sam Castro, Rod Smith undrafted with 2 Super Bowl wins is nice. I just don't know how much you credit the Super Bowl win to the wide receiver, unfortunately, even though he was awesome in Super Bowl 33. I think they'll look at the individual accolades, and unfortunately, that's where Smith is lacking. Though, man, undrafted guys get screwed over and over and over again because they get paid very poorly off the stop, and it takes them so much longer to build up that notoriety that could have gotten him on some more Pro Bowl teams. Because I think from a stat standpoint, he was deserving of some more accolades. But anyways, I do actually think Russ does have a small chance of an MVP season. I don't think it's likely. We're talking about a guy who even in the prime of his career couldn't even receive a single MVP vote. So even if he recaptures his prime, it seems like the answer would be no. I also think the quarterback talent's gotten a lot better with the Mahomeses and the Allens of the world. Those guys weren't at the height of their powers when Russell Wilson was. So I think it's a bit of a nightmare from that standpoint. But man, Sean Payton was churning out top 5 offenses with the corpse of Drew Brees. So I'm not going to put anything by him. Maybe he can figure out something that it gives Russell Wilson his best statistical year, and MVP being a narrative-based award. People would love to celebrate a Russ dominance fest. I don't think it'll happen, but I think there's like a 1% chance that just the stars align and everything works out right. But I think he's a limited quarterback now, and I don't see that next level getting unlocked for him again.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think he can. So I think it's kind of, I don't think he's literally being like, I think Russ is going to win MVP. I think when he's making this comment, it's like he thinks that Russell Wilson can get to the caliber of which he was in the past. Is kind of what I think he's alluding to here. I don't literally think that he's going into this being like, yes, Russell Wilson can be better than Jalen Hurts. He can be better than Pat Mahomes. He can be better than these other guys. It's just him saying that he could probably reach to where he used to be, is what he's saying. Because I don't even think that version of Russell Wilson is as good as Pat Mahomes is right now, right? So that's kind of what I think he's getting at there. And can he do that? I don't think Russ is ever going to be the quarterback he was in Seattle. Now, here's the thing. Zach brought up a very interesting point. Drew Brees put up great numbers when he clearly wasn't as good as he used to be. And that was because of Sean Payton and the weapons around Drew Brees, right? So if Sean Payton can get those weapons going and Russell Wilson, hiding those weaknesses and making him better, it might be obvious to us. Yeah, Russell Wilson's probably not as good as he used to be. He might get there in production. That's a possibility. And you know what? At the end of the day, a lot of these media people, especially these national media people, what are they doing? They're not actually watching the game. They're looking at the production, and they probably won't tell a difference. So I don't think he'll be an MVP. I don't think he'll be the same caliber of quarterback, but I do think he could reach pretty good production levels under Sean Payton. I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket, but I think it's definitely possible. Because if you were to ask me straight up, or Zach, I'll throw this at you. Do you think Russell Wilson can be better than that last version of Drew Brees we saw?
Man, that's a good question. Yeah, probably. Like that version of Drew Brees was so inept. I think Drew Brees had a more proven cast of talent that grew up in that Sean Payton system and was more familiar. I think they had more options at their disposal to get there. But I think like in a vacuum, totally, Russ can be better than that version of Drew Brees. The offense could end up being better. I think it's going to be difficult. I think Sean Payton can do it. We've kind of seen him do it with Taysom Hill. But I'm curious to see how much he can maximize Russell Wilson, because I do think Russell Wilson has some serious limitations. And they're kind of the polar opposite of what Drew Brees were at this point in his career. And I think Sean Payton can figure it out, but it's a very different challenge. So I want to see how he figures it out.
Right. So I ask you that question, and I think I agree with you, Zach. I think that Russell Wilson can be better than that version of Drew Brees. Where I'm getting a little hesitancy is, can the Broncos offense be as good as that version of the Saints? When I look at, that offensive unit down the board, I don't think the Broncos unit's I don't think they're better than that version of the Saints. You guys got to think about that O-line that they had, that dominant offensive line at the end there. They had Michael Thomas rolling. Alvin Kamara was rolling. It's hard for me to imagine this year's Broncos offensive unit as a whole being better than that version of the Saints. Do you agree with me there?
Yeah, I do. It's going to be so hard for the offense to get back there. And I do think I'm curious what this phase of Sean Payton looks like. I think he's still an amazing coach, but I don't think it's just a given that you set up somewhere else and have the same level of dominance. Hopefully it's an Andy Reid type thing, but I also don't think that's a given.
Okay. All right. Well, are we done with the news today, or
I think we are.
We're done with the news.
I think it's
perfect. So, guys, I made a graphic this weekend, and it was a draft. Your 15 Zach, can you pull it up real quick for me?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Can you draft your best Broncos with $15, right? And I forgot an I in build, but no one noticed except for Julian. So hey, we're out here. No one noticed. But and we're gonna go around. Zach and I are the way I envision this going. Zach, you tell me if you think any different. I imagine you taking the first pick. That's your 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. We're crossing that guy off. You can't draft him. I can't draft him if you draft him. Do you want first or do you want second and third pick?
I'm going to take first if you're going to offer it to me.
And since Bree didn't come to the show, and hey, Bree, get better. She's just feeling a little under the weather today. We're going to put up a poll after this. She's going to get 15 Drew locks.
Yeah, I think 15 Drew locks. I think an army of Drew locks.
I think an army, yeah.
With my first pick here, I was actually thinking about this as I was flying into DIA today, what I would do. I think there's a good advantage with the first pick. I'm taking Peyton Manning, first overall pick.
$4 off the board.
I think you want the start quarterback. Obviously, you're going with either Peyton Manning or John Elway with that first pick. But John Elway here is in the $5 row. Should be spelling this out for our audio listeners. And Peyton Manning's in the $4 row. And I think those two guys are neck and neck. I think you could even argue Peyton Manning hit higher peaks. Obviously, the career wasn't there with the Broncos, specifically with the Broncos. He only had like 3 elite years. But in terms of peak, that might have been the highest peak any Broncos quarterback ever reached. I can get that for $4. Let's go. Old man Peyton Manning. We're going to be dicing fools up like the 2013 Broncos.
I think that's a really good one. I think that's the obvious one because I think you're kind of splitting hairs there between John Elway and Peyton Manning, right? And you need a quarterback on your team. It's too close to just throw the extra dollar in. So if I had the first pick, I would agree with you. I would go with Peyton Manning. But because quarterback is so important, Zach, I think I have to go with John Elway. It's the most important position on the field. And Zach, you were the ones that gave me the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at these quarterbacks here. And you put John Elway over Peyton Manning. So I think I'm just going to take the better quarterback in your eyes with my first pick.
That's who I'm going to pick. He's the better Broncos quarterback, but part of this is balancing the budget. And I think Manning's the better budget buy.
And guys, if you guys are watching right now, make sure you guys are putting yours in the comments on YouTube. I'd love to hear them. I'll read them out, and Zach and I will go over them if you guys do that. So I'm going to go John Elway with my first. Zach has Peyton Manning with his first, and now I get a second. I'm going to go with DT. I want Demaryius Thomas. I want John Elway throwing the ball deep downfield with that cannon of an arm to a receiver that was quick as any receiver the Broncos have ever had, but in a massive frame. I'm going with Demaryius Thomas. Great Bronco. Yards after catch threat. I can't say enough good words about Demaryius Thomas. So I with my first 2 picks, I'm going John Elway, Demaryius Thomas. I'm at $9 so far.
I love the DT pick. I think that's a really smart pick. I would have gone there if you didn't. But you could have let John Elway sit out there. I didn't, I knew you weren't going to, but you should have known I wasn't going to take a second quarterback and use that against me. You fool. Now I am going to take Shannon Sharp with my next pick. I think that is the
$5. Wow, he's big spender over here.
Big spender, going big early. But that's the strategy, I think. I also think Shannon Sharp is one of the best bargains on this board because the Broncos don't have a lot of other great tight ends in their franchise history. Like Julius Thomas is probably the next best guy, and he had a season or 2. Peak there was fun, but not a whole lot else going. Like Tony Scheffler, Noah Fant, Owen Daniels, a lot of the same going on there. The only true difference maker in my eyes is Shannon Sharp. So I'm going to leave you with just a bucket of mid at tight end.
And all these Broncos are mids. You heard it here first. You can find them at Zach
Shannon Sharp. I'm at $9. All right. Wait, then I get another pick.
You get another pick.
Shoot. Oh man, I've got $6 across my final three guys. I'm going to take Brandon Marshall. I'm getting all my expensive guys out of the way. I can't afford Rod Smith, though I think he'd be a great receiver. Brandon Marshall is my favorite Broncos player of all time to watch. That like I grew
Wow.
up being able to watch. He was so much fun. I love that Cowboys game. I was just like throwing guys off of
Yeah.
him. He was an insanely fun player. The Colts game where he has 21 receptions. Pair him with that 2013 Peyton Manning. And man, we're going crazy. Around that same time in the NFL, Brandon Marshall was tearing it up for the Ryan Fitzpatrick Jets. Imagine if he had Peyton Manning throwing him the ball. It would have been amazing. That's my next two selections.
Okay. Hey, I'm not mad at the Brand Marshall one. A lot like DT, but slower. So I put him below him, a lot slower, matter of fact, but very similar games, just like not as fast or like
Taking wild
good
shots.
downfield or like anything of that nature. So I'm going DT, and I'm at $9 right now with my next. I'm going Clinton Portis. That's who I'm taking with my $3 right there, and that'll put me at 12. Clinton Portis, for those that don't remember, 2 years as a Bronco only, right? But this guy put up 1,500 and 1,600 yards in those years. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. He was an absolute monster, leading the league, matter of fact, with 5.5 yards per carry in that 1,600-yard season. And what did we get out of him? We got a $4 player out of Clinton Portis after that. I feel like I'm getting a bargain here because I might just trade him after this if I so need to, just to get, my future Hall of Fame cornerback as well. I'm just kidding. Clinton Portis, though,
Right.
he was a monster. If we were just talking about peak performers at a position, he's up there with almost anybody. He really, really is. There's a reason why the Washington football team traded Champ Bailey to the Broncos for Clinton Portis. That's how he was thought of after those first 2 years as a Bronco. So I'm definitely going Clinton Portis there. And with my next, I will go with Elvis Dumervil. I'm going with Elvis Dumervil for one. And that is going to be a guy that had a 20-sack season for the Broncos. Again, a little shorter than we would have wished as if we're Broncos fans. But guy's a pass rush specialist to the T. We haven't seen anything like him. I think he's 5'11", 20 sacks a season, dominant pass rusher. And it didn't just stop with the Broncos. He went over to the Baltimore Ravens and continued that dominant pass rushing. He's a guy that I think is a steal right there. How many teams could you put with a 20 sack in a year guy as a $1 on your board? I mean, he's in the marks of Drew Lock, Owen Daniels, and Eric Decker. This guy completely is a steal for $1, so I have to take him.
I agree. It's crazy. I think that's the advantage of going with the defense for all five. I will say he's the one. I do think there's a gap between him and the $2 guy, and so I'll gladly grab the $2 guy here. Trevor Pryce, maybe the most underrated Bronco of all time. Just an absolute monster. Was a little before my time, but one of the most dominant defensive linemen of his era. I feel like he often gets overshadowed. It was like later on into my football fandom that I even found out that he was this Bronco legend. Playing at the same time as Rod Smith, who we would all agree, Rod Smith, surefire, Broncos legend, superstar, all that. Trevor Pryce in that same time had 2 first-team All-Pros, 4 Pro Bowls, so 1 more Pro Bowl than Rod Smith, 2 more All-Pro appearances, and then twice finished in the top 5 in the Defensive Player of the Year vote. So just a monster. Interior pressure is maybe the most valuable thing in the NFL on defense, that is, and maybe the hardest thing to come by. There are so few guys that can deliver it at an elite level. Trevor Pryce was one of those guys really ahead of his time. 3 double-digit sack seasons. 6 seasons where he had at least 8.5 sacks. Again, on the interior in the early 2000s, when there's fullbacks, it's a run heavy league at this point in time. I'm rolling with Draymond, or not, for goodness, Trevor Price, excuse me. The 93s threw me off. And then I'm closing it out with Noshawn Marino. Running backs don't matter. And hey, Marino was a good one. He's got the chemistry with Peyton Manning. The best he ever looked was when he was teamed up with Peyton Manning. Looked like he could finally deliver on that pre-draft.
Wait, I have a question.
That's a team.
Why is Marino below Philip Lindsay? I feel like I want to flip this. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it.
I mean, this was part of the game. You were staring at it forever.
I didn't think about this.
You made it.
I know I made it, but I'm now sitting here thinking about it. Marino should be ahead of Philip Lindsay.
Maybe, but I don't think Marino ever made a Pro Bowl, and I think I was thinking Broncos fans would prefer Lindsay. So
no, it's good for the clicks. Shout out Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock at 2-1. And to finish it off, I am going to take Teddy. I'm just kidding. I'm going to take Noah Fant to fill out my roster. Noah Fant, first round pick. You know, a guy that I never felt like has hit his stride yet. When you go back and watch his stuff at Iowa, it's hard to see that big of a progression like you want to see from a first round pick from college to NFL. You know, tight ends take longer. They do. They take longer. You're almost learning two different skill sets, right? Blocking and receiving. And that's what the Broncos tried to do with Noah Fant. It wasn't just Noah Fant's like our slot guy. He's a big slot like an Evan Ingram. No, they wanted him to play actual tight end where he had to learn how to block and he had to learn how a route tree and how to get open. That's hard. That's not easy. There's a reason why there's only so many elite tight ends in the NFL at a given time. There's really barely ever any really, really good tight ends in the NFL at one time. But it is kind of disappointing that he never fully hit his stride up to this point. I feel like year after year, he's kind of similar. It's just a little disappointing, but it's a guy that can still, I'm not fully out on him because right now he's a fine tight end. He's not a bad tight end at all. He's fine. He's good. But I want to see him. I'm taking him for the potential because he's still playing out the rest of his career. And if I'm looking over this Broncos list, if I'm talking pure talent wise, I think he's more talented than everybody on this tight end list other than Shannon Sharp. So I'm going to take Noah Fant. He's going to be a downfield threat. If you haven't noticed, Zach, I have by far the fastest team out of the two of us. I have John Elway, Clinton Portis, Demaryius Thomas, Noah Fant. And then even my pass rusher is faster than yours. I don't know. I think speed kills, and I think my team's a little better than yours. But anyways, Zach,
tell that to the Miami Heat.
Yeah, right. Please tell everybody before we get out here your final roster, and then I'm going to tweet this out as well. I'm going to put up a little poll, and you guys tell us which one is better. But let the audience know who is your picks.
Absolutely. I had at quarterback Peyton Manning for $4, at running back Noshawn Marino for $1, at wide receiver Brandon Marshall for $3, at tight end Shannon Sharp for $5. Imagine that offense really quick. Joey's talking about speed, whatever. Man, Peyton Manning with Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas. Credit to Demaryius Thomas is great. But with Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas and Owen Daniels, I guess there's also Julius Thomas in there. But the best offense in NFL history. Imagine if he had I mean, he's still in Moreno, but imagine just throw Shannon Sharp. It's pretty much that lineup that he had before, but throw Shannon Sharp into the mix.
Bro, he has the difference between your team and the other team is that Peyton Manning's team is going well over $15.
We're taking the best offense in NFL history, and we're swapping Marshall in for DT and Shannon Sharp in for Julius Thomas. That team's insane. That team's out of this world. And then to build our defense around, we've got Trevor Price, who is going to impact the run game a lot, a dominant interior pass rusher before his era or before his time for $2. Shannon Sharp for 5, Marshall for 3, Marino for 1, Manning for 4. My team beats Joey's. Go on Twitter and vote for me.
Okay, so my team, Zach, is being a little ridiculous right now. So I have the better quarterback if we're talking about Broncos 10 guys, right? So and quarterback's the most important position on the field. Zach has how many years did Peyton Manning play as a Bronco? 4 years, correct? There's 3 or 4 years. I think it was 4 years.
4 years, but 3 elite ones: 2012, 2013, and then 2014. Though he kind of tapered off at the end.
Okay. And then I have John Elway, very long career as a Bronco. Then I'm going Clinton Portis. Then I'm going Demaryius Thomas. Then I'm going Noah Fant, and I'm finishing it off with Elvis Dumervil. That's my team there. And I have a bench full of Teddy Bridgewaters because he's my favorite. But to close us off here, Frankie is asking, when is Travis Hunter going to come on the pod, Zach? What the hell?
Man, I don't think he loves doing media stuff. I think he's got some Jokic to him, which I love, but I don't see him coming on anytime soon, unfortunately.
All right. And Kyle's asking me when Shannon Sharp is coming on the podcast. Shannon Sharp is always welcome on this podcast. I'll challenge him to a debate whenever. We could have a undisputed-esque battle on this if we wanted to. I'll draw up some topics. He can come on here, and that would be amazing. I would love it. That would be very, very fun. But, guys, I think that does it for today's episode. Again, I'm going to put this out on Twitter. But before I close out, Zach, where can they find all your amazing work, man?
Yeah, go over to milehighsports.com where I've got lots of Buffs coverage. I'm really going to be amping it up this week. I'm going to have a column out tomorrow. I think either ranking the running backs in the Pac-12, thinking about that. Might be doing something else, maybe like an award preview. No idea. And then that's about it. Oh, yeah, go over to YouTube, please. This episode was made for YouTube. If you listen to the podcast, I hope it translated well for audio form, but we got a lot more bells and whistles over on video. So go to YouTube and search Let's Talk Broncos and find us there. Joey,
do that.
Your work.
Yes, everybody. The main thing I want you to do today, if you are listening, please go and rate us 5 stars on something. Subscribe to us, please. It'll be a great help to us. Zach, Bree, and I are on here all the time. We love talking Broncos. It's something we love to do, and we just want it to grow. That would be amazing. We put a lot of time into this. If you guys could help us out in any way, that would be fantastic. It would be greatly appreciated. As for me, you can just follow me at JR Drafts. Cal, I will look that up right after I get off. But until next time, guys, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.